Hi, I'm Scott Alexander, and welcome to Slashed. This is a routine that I performed for many years, and in just a few moments in the Hollywood Theater behind me, I'm going to perform it for an audience of 1,000 people, here aboard the first cruise ship to be built for the American flag in over 50 years, the Pride of America. Now, this routine is extremely practical. It can be in your case, ready to go at a moment's notice. There's no preset. Also, the routine is really visual and has a simple plot, but the plot builds through each of the 3 phases to a breathtaking climax. Now, the routine uses a combination of principles, some moves that have been around in the magic literature, some new moves that some great innovators have come up with that I've borrowed, and a little gimmick that I've thrown in the mix to throw off those in the know. In fact, I performed this for several magicians, and there are 2 moments in the routine that guys who perform this trick or this type of thing have had their jaws hit the floor when they see those moments. So that's a plus if you're performing this for some magicians. Now, what you're going to see on here are 2 separate performances. One is the stand-up comedy version, and the second one is a version I've specially prepared for international audiences that you could do silent. And we also will give you the music on the DVD. All you need to do is copy it over to a CD and feel free to use it. It was generated at Bob Kohler Studios and is royalty-free. So, sit back, relax, and enjoy the stand-up comedy version of Slashed.
Magic has a rich history, and I'd like to begin with the oldest trick in recorded magical history, over 5,000 years old, known simply as the Hindu rope trick. Now, in this particular illusion, the magician would walk out onto a public square. He would take the rope, toss it high up into the air, and snap his fingers, where it would become rigid as a pole. And this was long before Viagra. Then a small Hindu boy dressed in ceremonial garb would come forth, climb up the rope, and at its very apex disappear in a puff of smoke, never to be seen again. Ladies and gentlemen, would you like to see me recreate this ancient mystery tonight for you here on this stage? Do we have any small Hindu boys dressed in ceremonial? All right. No Hindu boy, no Hindu rope trick. Sorry. That'd be good. Good night, everybody. Drive safe. I'm just kidding. Actually, what I'd like to do for you is, in that case, the second oldest trick in recorded magical history, well over 4,999 years old. The incredible cut and restored rope trick. In this particular illusion, the magician, or Egyptian magician in this case, where it came from Egypt. In fact, this trick is so old it was pictured in the hieroglyphics. So old it was even pictured in the lower glyphics. Come on, you people watch the Discovery Channel, you know what I'm talking about. In this particular illusion, the magician would take the rope, find the very center of the rope, cut it into 2 pieces, and then restore it back together again into the same rope, symbolizing life, death, birth and rebirth, death and reincarnation itself. How many people believe in reincarnation? Raise your hand. Nice to have you back. Now, in this particular illusion, ladies and gentlemen, watch very closely as we take the rope and we sever it into 2 equal pieces. Very important, the pieces are equal. In order to cut the rope, I will use this razor knife purchased from the ancient Office Depot, which, by the way, has a warning on the knife. It says, "Warning, sharp blade." Ladies and gentlemen, if you need that warning, you should not own one of these. I'll just tell you that. We'll give the rope a nice snip in half. Now, the rope has been divided into 2 pieces, equal at the top and pretty darn close at the bottom. All right. Now, ladies and gentlemen, it's my job to rejoin these pieces of rope back together again into the very same rope. I will say the ancient Egyptian chant. Owe-oh, 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 walk like an Egyptian. Bangles, anybody? Okay. And now the rope goes back together again into the very same rope. Just like that. Now I know what you're thinking. Hey, that's a trick. And you're right. I'm not going to stand up here and insult your intelligence. This, ladies and gentlemen, is a trick rope. But the ends of the rope aren't the trick part. Actually, the middle of the rope is the trick part. But see, you can't trust a magician. Which one do you think is the trick part, the ends or the middle?
Middle.
The ends are the trick part. That's right, because I can actually take the ends and pop them right off the rope. Which leaves me with nothing but an endless loop of rope. No beginning and no end, but providing a rather interesting middle to the illusion, don't you think? Now the hard part, to take these ends and rejoin them back onto the rope once again. Here's how it's done. I will isolate the ropes as they did in ancient days on the wrist. Now it is my job to find a spot somewhere on the loop to rejoin the rope. That should be a good enough spot. Now watch as I scoop up the ends off of my wrist onto the loop. Now don't take your eyes off of the ends as they dangle precariously on the loop. Now ladies and gentlemen, if you have any medication, take it now. Because what you're about to see, you won't believe. The pieces that were on my wrist now slowly melt back onto the ends, creating a single rope. Now, folks, the first time I cut this rope in half and restored it, you might have noticed that I restored it rather quickly. You weren't paying attention. This time, I would like to cut the rope and restore the rope in slow motion, giving you a chance to see exactly how the pieces go back together. Watch very carefully. As you can see, the two pieces dangle precariously from my hand. Now, as I pull on both pieces, one gets longer and the other one gets shorter, slowly restoring itself back into one rope. One gets longer, the other one gets shorter. One gets longer, the other one gets shorter. One gets longer, the other one gets shorter, till we're left with a short piece and a long one. Now let's see. Let's give this a try. You, sir, grab the end of this rope. Pull on it, tug it, make sure it doesn't come apart. You, sir, grab the end of this rope. Pull on it, tug it, make sure it doesn't come apart. You, sir, grab this rope. Pull it, tug it, make sure it doesn't come apart. Give a jerk on that end and a jerk on that end. Hey, we've got a jerk on each end, and it's still all right. That's great. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Do you find that that rope does not come apart? Excellent. And that was the long one, and you've got the short one, sir? Nothing personal. Just toss that up here. Fantastic. That's great. Now then, ladies and gentlemen, to bring this mystery to a conclusion, watch very closely. The short pieces, you will actually see them with your very eyes, if you have very eyes, that is. You will see the pieces slowly blend back into the long piece, right about here. Don't take your eyes off of this spot as the rope melts together. Now, invariably, as these pieces get smaller and smaller and smaller as they're woven onto the rope, everyone in the audience leans forward, strains in to try to figure out exactly what their eyes are seeing, and they'll all go, huh? But they do it at different times. So let's get that out of the way right now. Everybody go, huh? Huh? Good. Now you can concentrate on the thunderous round of applause. Watch closely as you see these two end pieces blend slowly back onto the rope. Watch. Slowly. They'll get smaller and smaller, weaving themselves back onto the rope, as in the ancient art of basket weaving, practiced in most Middle Eastern cultures and insane asylums around the world. Watch. Shorter and shorter, shorter and shorter and shorter, until the rope is restored. And ladies and gentlemen, if I can leave you with one ancient thought, as the Buddha said to the hot dog vendor, make me one with everything. That's the illusion, and I thank you.
Well, if you were a good magician and didn't look at the props beforehand, hopefully you were fooled by the routine. Now, the first thing I want to talk about, as far as the props go, is the knife. This is a Stanley razor knife, and the knife that you get with the kit will look very much like this. Now, it comes in several pieces, and I'll show you what we've done here. Now, one of the nice things about the knife is that it makes this nice clicking sound when you open it. So it makes a click. If you want to amplify that click and you're wearing a microphone, then you can do the click right up by the microphone so the audience hears that blade come out. Just a little auditory seasoning there. But I like the click of the knife to sell the fact that this is a real sharp knife. Now, what we've done here is we've placed some Scotch tape over the blade itself. 2 layers of Scotch tape. Now, in effect, what we've done is completely dulled the blade. And in the choreography, I'm actually cutting the rope with this side of the knife anyway, and this side is completely dull. You can flip the blade around in the chamber here, but it doesn't make quite as nice of a click. It goes up a little slower. So we just leave the knife in this situation, put the tape around it, which completely protects you, and use this surface to cut the rope. That way it's completely clean and nothing goes wrong. And you're going to want to replace that Scotch tape every couple of shows. Just peel it off and put some new tape on, and that'll protect it. You can also grind the blade down a little further if you like with a grinding wheel or sandpaper to dull both sides if you wish. Now, this knife actually comes apart into a couple of different pieces. The bottom here is a little clip, and this clip just allows you to be able to hang it on your jacket pocket if you like, or it's completely just a decorative item. And it does serve another purpose, which is to hold the end together and keep this part from coming out. So that's the clip end. There's also the button. Now this button actually slides up and down, which moves the blade. This button completely detaches, and there's a small, right here, there's a small pin that engages in the hole here in the metal blade, and that's what causes it to push up and down. Also on the piece here, there is a lock. When you pull back on the lock, it locks the blade so it won't slide. But you'll never use this in the routine. It's just an extra added feature of the knife. I don't even bother with it. But that's what that function is. That actually locks the blade when it's pulled into a back position. So in other words, when this is placed in and slid up into the knife, it moves freely back and forth. But then if you wanted to lock the blade, you would pull back on just the bottom portion there. And now, of course, the blade wouldn't move. Then to unlock, you push up, and now the blade freely moves again. So that's what that part is, the black button. Next is the blade itself, which, as I mentioned, we have placed 2 layers of tape on to prevent it from cutting you or the rope itself. And last but not least is the main shaft of the knife that, of course, says here, warning, sharp blade. I love that part. So to put the knife back together, you're going to slide that end in, place the clip itself into the peg, push that all the way up into the knife, place the clip back on, and once again, your knife is ready to go. So like I said, feel free to experiment with the knife. Just get a really good feel for pushing back and forth with your thumb to pop that open. And that is the slashed part of Slasher. Now let's take a look at the rope. Now what we've done is we've color-coded the rope into several different areas: yellow, green, blue, and last but not least, red. Now these areas represent the different parts of the rope where the magic takes place. And in case you haven't figured it out, the trick is done with magnets. Now, there's a critical placement of the magnets. First of all, let's talk about how it breaks down. The yellow end, which is on the short piece, has absolutely no magnets. It's just a free end, and it really won't come into play very often during the routine. On the other end of the short rope is the green section, and that has a very strong magnet in it that we've set into the rope. The blue section is on the end of the long piece. The blue and green will connect to form one long rope. Once again, blue and green connect to form one long rope. And last but not least, way down here on the other end is the red guy. Now, the red will not connect to the green. It doesn't want to connect. It will connect to the side, it'll connect up here, but it won't actually go flush. They will repel each other, the red and green. The blue and red connect to form a loop, just like that. Blue and red form the loop because the red is at one end of the long piece and the blue is at the other end. Now when you put it all together, you've got yellow, nothing, green and blue connect, all the way down here at the other end, the red connects to the blue to form the loop. And that's the basis of the layout for the magnets in the rope. Now let's get started learning the routine. This routine itself, of course, is based on several moves from other routines, including Darrell's, George Sand's Sensational Rope, and mainly influenced by Tabaret. I saw Tabaret's routine, and I really enjoyed it. I really thought it was elegant. And I based the lengths of rope loosely on Tabaret's lengths that he uses. The only difference really is the addition of the magnets. And I think that takes it to a whole different level. In other words, it frees your hands up. You don't have to hide anything because you can really put this out in the open. Now, some of you may be familiar with the moves that are used. Some of it may be new to you. In fact, a lot of you might perform routines similar to this. In fact, I showed this routine to Shutagawa, and he does the Tabaret rope routine. Well, when he saw this particular version and it got to certain points in the routine, his jaw hit the floor and he was fooled for a second, which is always something that we as magicians treasure, being fooled for just that instant by something new. So I know this routine has impact and I know it has power from the reactions I've gotten out of it. So let's take a look at phase one. Now let's take a look at the starting position of the rope. And as I mentioned, the rope is color coordinated, and we've included some stickers that you can place on the rope to match up to the different colors that'll make it easier for you to learn and follow along. But I will caution you, if you do put the stickers on the rope, make sure you take the stickers off the rope when you go to perform it for an audience, or they'll have a really easy time following what's going on. Now the rope starts like this. The short piece in the left hand and the other end of the long piece over here in the right hand. Now what you're going to do is you're looking for the distance between this end of the short piece and this end of the short piece. You're looking for the middle, right about here. What you want to do is create a length of rope with this particular end that starts from the bottom and ends right there in the middle of the rope, creating a length right here of half the distance of this piece. At that point, you're just going to clip it with your thumb and index finger of your right hand. Now, that's the length you're looking for, so that when this is folded down, it creates three pieces of rope, boom, boom, and boom, that are all equidistant. Now, before this end is actually brought down, what you're going to do is you're going to break the magnetic seal, just like that. And I do that by holding the short piece with my thumb and forefinger, and my pinky sort of grabs on to the long piece, and I break it just like that. So here's how it goes in fast motion. As I bring it up, I make the break and separate it. Of course, keeping my hand closed so the audience can't see that it's actually separated in the hand. And I have complete control of each of these ends. I measure up half the distance of the short piece, fold this section down. Now what I'm looking for to happen here is for that red end, or the end of the long piece, to swing over and connect to the blue piece, just like this. Boom. All I'm going to do at this point is let the short piece drop and sort of hang right there on the loop that's now created, and then I'm going to flop it over my right wrist. Flop, just like that. Now then, this hand is going to grab with the bottom 3 fingers, 1, 2, 3, I'm going to grab the other piece of the rope. My thumb and forefinger are going to pinch just above the magnet connection here, and I'm going to slowly drag the magnets all the way down to the opposite end of the rope. In other words, what happens is the magnets are brought from that section all the way down to the hand here. So that now what we have is a short piece looped, the long piece in half, with the magnets right here at the bottom section. Now, the reason that I do that, the reason that I use these 3 fingers is that my pinky is going to create a stopping point right here, so that I know that the magnet is now the length of these 3 fingers. So when I let go, the magnet is on the side of the rope instead of being here, sort of tipping off the method. That way the pinky is there, I stop at the pinky and release, so that now the magnet is upright and won't tip the fact that it's a stiff section of rope. Now it's time for the knife. The knife comes out of one of the left side pockets, and I extend the blade with my thumb. Boom. I simply bring that section of the knife right against this part, and because we're going to pull and cut, the magnets should not reconnect like this. Boom. Because they're 2 different lengths. In other words, they're going to drop and fall at separate locations. One is going to be a little higher than the other because of the condition the rope is in, like this. So when it splits, they're going to fall one end higher and one end lower. That way there's no risk of the magnets reconnecting by accident, thus creating a spontaneous magic trick you weren't expecting. I'll also tell you one other thing about making the cuts in the rope. When you make the cuts in the rope, don't make it seem too easy. It shouldn't just slide through like butter. There should be a brief bit of hesitation. In fact, let me bring this up a little bit so you can see a little easier. Extend the blade, place the knife in, give a little effort, give a little physical change in your body. Squint your eye or tense up your muscles a little bit. Pause and then pull to create the cutting action. Now, I over-dramatize that, but that's the feel you want to get, that the rope is some tension and boom, as opposed to, hey, look, there it is, and look, I cut it. Okay, unless this blade were really sharp, that would be impossible. So a little acting required there. Now that you have the rope severed in 2 pieces, you can do this display by pulling the rope and hanging that loop off the back of your hand. That's a very nice thing to do. Just kind of pull and show. And now the rope, of course, is hanging off the back of the hand and looks like there's nothing funny going on. And then just a simple tug will pull that knot, or that loop rather, back into your hand. At this point, I transfer everything, the loop here, to the left hand. And now I'm going to bring up the ends of the ropes. Now, usually what I'll do is I'm looking for the end down here that's going to connect to this section right here. In other words, the section with the magnet in it. Now, on the ropes, you'll notice the blue section here has 4 black dots. Those dots are placed there, and they will be on your rope too. Those dots tell me that it connects to the piece right here. So that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for that piece to connect here. So when I bring up the 2 ropes, I simply take a glimpse of which end has the black dots, and I just drop the other one. All I do is I simply bring this piece up, bring it into immediate contact with that piece, and leave everything in the hand. Then I bring up this piece and pinch it between my thumb and forefinger. Now all I have to do is let everything go, keeping hold with the thumb and forefinger, and it looks like it drops right back together again. That's one way to do the restoration. The second way that I do the restoration, and I'll change it up from time to time, whatever the mood strikes me, the other way I will do it is like this. It won't matter which particular end I look for in this version. All I'll do is I'll simply pick up one end, and it doesn't matter which end I get. Let's say I get the end that doesn't have the dots on it. I know that's not going to connect here. So I'll just bring that end up and drop it over my wrist. Now I know the next end is going to make the connection, so I simply pick that up, bring it into the proximity of the rope here, place everything into the hand, pinch the end of the rope here that I held onto before, and drop, and it falls. In a similar situation, if I were to get the other rope, in other words, the end that did connect, it wouldn't matter. All you would do is this. You would grab onto the first end, you would see the dots and know that it connected. Then I would drape it over the wrist and just let it hang near this magnet here. So I know these two are going to connect. Then I bring the other one up. I see that of course doesn't have an end, and I let that hang a little higher. Now it's simply a matter to bring the hand up, bring these close together where they will automatically connect, place everything into the hand, look for that end, and let it go. So there's 3 different ways you can approach that. And I will tell you one other thing. The reason that I always hold on to the long end and drop is that just to be extra cautious. In other words, when I drop, the end with the connection and the magnets are going to be down towards the ground, so there's no chance of anybody, even close up, spotting the connection of where the magnet is. You don't have to be concerned with that because the magnets are placed on pretty good, but I usually do it that way just for the heck of it. So that's phase number 1. Once you've mastered that, you've got the basic phases for the entire routine. So practice that one move of measuring, turning, flipping, stretching, and cutting. And now we'll look at phase 2. Now let's move on to phase 2, my favorite phase of the whole routine, because the first phase is exposition. We're setting them up and getting them to believe the lie. And the lie we want them to believe in the first phase is that this is a completely solid rope. Now what they see is, they see the rope folded in half, they see it cut, and they see it restored. That's a miracle. But they've seen it handled freely and placed back together again. In other words, there's no death grip. There's no what's in your hand syndrome, because the rope is manipulated freely with the hands open. Now that they believe that this is a solid rope, we're going to pull the rug right out from under them and cause them to think, well, wait a minute, then it must be a trick rope because what I've seen is incomprehensible. So let's take a look at how this works. What we're going to do is, again, start in the same position. The end of the long piece over here, the short piece once again. We're going to measure off the same distance as in the first part. So once you get that moved down, you're home free. Once again, you're going to bring the rope down. But this time, instead of, after this connects, dropping the other pieces and hanging them on the rope, you're simply going to just swing the pieces over. Which what it does is it creates 2 separate pieces. In other words, they're not hooked through. It's just 2 separate ends right here. Okay? And once again, this piece, of course, where the magnets are, is still hidden in the hand. So let's go back to that part one more time just so you can see it. Once again, you measure off, drop it down and connect, and then we simply flip it over with no connection here. Now, at this point, you're going to do the same thing. You're going to begin stretching it and letting it pivot right here around the middle finger. It just sort of pivots right around the middle finger. And at a point where the rope is just about to end here, I usually do it about that far, all I'm going to do is pull, and at this point, as I'm pulling, I simply let the rope snap off the fingers, showing the ends here. Now, when the audience sees that moment, it's shocking. They don't expect it because you've just pulled the ends off the rope. When they were thinking that's a completely normal rope, now they don't know what to think. And usually I'll do one of two things at this point. I don't really want them to see the rope in this condition yet. I don't want them to see that picture. I want them to keep this picture in their head of the ends just popping off the rope. So I'll do one of two things. I'll either put the rope in my teeth, or I'll toss it over the shoulder and just let it hang there so they get that picture. Now, you're going to do the middle move. And this is, I mean, we've all seen this before. I mean, as a magician, this is nothing new. But to an audience, this is a killer. In fact, you'll see it gets one of the best reactions in the routine. I do the standard move, keeping pressure here and just letting the rope flow through the hands. We're all familiar with this, and we've all seen it before. Or, if you're so inclined, without the colors on the rope, you can really do it. I mean, you can just let it flow because it's connected, right? Now, the real cool part, though, and the real thing that once again gets away from that what's in your hand syndrome is the fact that you can now completely open up your hands and show that this is a loop of rope. And once again, for those of you who are extra cautious or working in extra close-up situations, what you can do if you're concerned about people seeing the joint between these two pieces, all you have to do is simply toss it behind the thumb so that it hangs right there. Now it's completely hidden and completely obscured. You go from this situation to this situation here, and no one can see the connection. All right? And now we're going to integrate the little piece back into the big piece. We're going to reconnect this piece, of course, to the loop. And we can do that a couple of different ways. In Tabaret's wonderful routine, he does it like this. All he does is he takes the ends, loops them over, and lets them hang here. And that's pretty cool. Boom, and the ends reconnect back to the rope. I wanted something that sort of isolated the rope. It made it a better picture for the audience. So what I did was I decided to isolate the ends of the rope on my wrist. And what I do is I isolate the ends with the short piece and the magnet hanging on the right side of my wrist, and the long piece, of course, or the non-magnet piece over here. And I want to let the piece here on the right-hand side be a little longer than the other piece. These are connected to form the loop. Now all I'm going to do is I'm going to break this apart with my thumb and just take a glimpse, because you won't have the blue and red when you're performing on stage. I want to get a glimpse and see where the black dots are, because I want them to be right here in this hand. I want them to be towards me, towards my pinky, in other words, the way they are right now. If they were like this, when I broke it and saw it, I would just simply gesture over here with my eyes, just look here, and just completely flip the rope around so that the dots end up on the pinky side of my hand. Now all I'm going to do is, once again, just like I did with the other hand in the first phase, I'm going to break this apart. I'm going to, and sometimes I'll do this, I'll just give the rope a little toss as if I'm looking for a spot to connect the rope to on the hand here. I'll just give it a toss, look for the spot, and just let it go. And in effect, what that does is it makes it look like I'm searching for the right spot, and I found it. Now that that's hanging here, the piece is broken, I'm simply going to come over my wrist, and I'm going to lay the rope like this. And it's going to form an X right here at my wrist as I lay it over. Boom. And I'm looking for that same distance so that when I bring these down, they come into proximity with each other and are about the same length. So once again, I'm coming in with the rope from the front. I'm laying it across, and all I do is I keep the end of the long piece pinched in this finger here, in the first finger. The end of the piece with the dots I keep in my pinky. I'm going to come around this piece and let that connect. The green now connects with the blue there. I'm going to bring it away, up over the X, and back through in between. What that does is it loops around so that now I can pick up this piece off the wrist and it's hanging. It gives the illusion that that piece is hanging there. Now all I do is separate the two ends, and it looks like I've simply scooped up that piece off of my wrist and it rejoins. Let's do that one more time just so you can take a peek at it. It's hanging here. I simply break it apart, cross the X, come through and connect, continue on through, back underneath, and it scoops up right there. And it looks like that piece just lifted up right off my wrist. Now I'm simply going to open this up so everyone can see what they assume to be that piece, slowly and gently pull, and it looks like it reconnects. And that moment, in that moment, the audience has nowhere to go because they just saw that hanging on your wrist and now it's popped right back onto the ends. And one thing I will tell you from performing this, you have to wait because the audience's brain is trying to figure out exactly what happened. When they finally give up and go, I have no idea, that's when the applause starts. So once those ends connect, give a pause, give a little knowing look or knowing glance, let the audience go, you beat me, all right. I'll give you applause for that because I can't figure it out. And that's very important to wait at the end of the second phase. Now it's time for phase 3. Now phase 3 can go a couple of different ways, depending on whether you're doing the comedy version or the pantomime version. The pantomime version, I don't actually hand the ropes out to the spectators because there's really no time to do that. Now, I'm not to say that you couldn't. If you wanted to, you could hand them out and eliminate some of the other phases, but for what most people will do with this, I don't think it's necessary to hand them out for the pantomime part. But when you're doing the stand-up comedy version, which is the one that I do mainly, you definitely want to put these ropes into people's hands. So we'll talk about how to do that in just a moment. Now, the phase number 3 begins the same way the other phases do, with the same move. Again, you're going to measure halfway, down, and just like the first part, you're going to hang that over the loop and flip-flop it over your arm there. And that creates the loop once again. And boom, you pull. Once again, you stretch it. It goes all the way down to the other end, just like in the first phase, and you let it drop and dangle, measuring it off again with your pinky so you get that section of rope falling just a bit above the exact bottom of the rope. Again, if you like, you can do that display, pull it back inside. One other thing you might want to do that you can throw in, and I think Tabaret makes use of this, is to toss the rope over your shoulder, reach into your pocket, and then you can make the cut like that if you like. And then, of course, bring it back off of your shoulder back into play. That's just another thing that you can do that would be effective if that fits into your choreography. Otherwise, you just do the move, cut the rope, put it back into your pocket, remembering to make it so that the rope cuts and you don't have the ends of the magnets together. Now at this point, what I do is, on the stand-up comedy routine, I will pull on one side and say one gets longer, the other one gets shorter. One gets longer, the other one gets shorter. One gets longer and the other one gets shorter. When I've seen that done before, it kind of looks a little funky the way I've seen it. So what I do is I kind of put my finger in between the two and just grip with these fingers and make it look like I'm pulling both ropes. In other words, this goes through and I'm really clamping this section, so that's what's doing the pulling. But I make it look like I'm pulling both. So I say one gets longer, the other one gets shorter. One gets longer, the other one gets shorter. One gets longer, the other one gets shorter. So it looks like I'm actually pulling on both ropes at the same time. Just a personal preference. Now in this position, I'm going to actually show them a short piece and a long piece in this condition. So all I'm going to do is grab on to the long piece, and I'm going to let one side of the short piece fall and just separate the two, and then I'll turn my wrists over and use these two fingers in a scissor-like action to grab the ropes and show them in this condition. So in fast motion, it would look like this. One gets longer, the other one gets shorter. One gets longer, the other one gets shorter, till we're left with a short piece and a long piece. And now it's time for the ropes to be handed out to the spectators. So I take the long piece, and what you want to do, I would recommend, is tossing this over your shoulder so that you have a completely free grasp of this, and you don't bring the ends together to sort of tip and suggest the method. So just toss that over your shoulder like this and say to someone down in the front row, you, sir, grab this end of the rope, and you, ma'am, or you, sir, grab this end of the rope. Just like that. Now that you've gone out into the audience and done that, what you've done is you've placed the two ends of the rope into two different people's hands approximately 6 feet apart. What that does for you is it doesn't give a chance for a person to go, oh, look, they connect. Because what you're emphasizing is the rope solid? Does it come apart? Give a jerk on that and give a jerk on that and pull it nice and hard. So really what you're doing is you're negating the theory that it's a trick rope while putting the rope into the people's hands and handing them the trick part. It's great. So now once you have handed that rope out, then you bring out the short one, toss it to somebody else. Now, they're going to have that rope, but it doesn't matter because these ends don't connect anyway. There's nothing for them to find. And you're going to psychologically convince them by your words that the rope must come apart. It must pull apart somehow, directing their attention away from the ends. Because if they look at the ends, they're not going to look at the ends. They're the ends of a rope. What they're wondering is, does it come apart? And that's what you stress with your language. So take the rope, sir. Pull on it. Stretch it. Does it come apart? No. And you're only leaving the rope with them for a few moments. So when they're pulling and pulling, then it's time to bring the ropes back. Are you satisfied? Yep, doesn't come apart. So then you have the ends retrieved from these people, and you have the short one, nothing personal, throw the joke in if you like, bring that back. Now they have nowhere to go. You've just handed them ropes with magnets in them, they've examined them, you've convinced them that they're absolutely ordinary ropes. Even if the people you handed it to, let's say, figure out that there's a magnet in it, no one else will know. But there's no chance of them figuring that out anyway. If you choreograph it right and do your phraseology right, nobody is going to be concerned about the ends, and especially the rest of the audience. They have given up. Now at this point then, you're going to really fry them. And this is a beautiful move that Tabaret does that I think the magnets just make even stronger. What you're going to do is you're going to start with the end with the dots, your reference end here of the long rope, in your left hand, and you're going to begin with the short piece in your right hand. And you're going to make sure that the short piece is oriented like this, with the non-magnet end on your left side. You're going to measure down about halfway, half the distance of this to right about here, once again, so you have this kind of situation going on in front of the ropes. Okay? And you're going to place it in so that the middle creates sort of a T right here in the back, creates a T section, just like that. Okay? Now, you're going to fold that down over the front. Boom. Letting that go, you're now going to grab the end of the short piece without a magnet and exchange that for the other piece, bringing it up. Now the end with the magnet, the green end, is simply going to swing around the rope to the other side, go in between the pinky and the ring finger, and the new end up here is going to go in a scissors-like fashion between the first finger and the middle finger. The yellow end has now become the top, and you're going to stretch and sort of shimmy your fingers out to the ends. In this process, you're going to make sure that the magnets don't connect by simply very slowly walking your fingers out to the ends like this. Now at this point, I like to step on the end of the rope. That gives you some tension. So I actually use my foot and I step right on the end of the rope. That gives us some nice tension there. So what we want to create is a straight line from this hand to the floor, or as straight as possible, so they very cleanly see those ends. And now you're going to slowly begin moving these pieces in and just very slightly pulling on this end. And what you're going to do is create the illusion that those ends are actually weaving right onto the rope. And I like to give a nice display of this to people so that everyone in the room can see it. Once you get to this point, all there is to do is to simply fold everything into your fist and stretch the ropes and pull them from the floor and from your left hand till the magnets come into a position that they're ready to connect. And you simply let them connect in your hand. Once they've connected, you're home free. You simply open your hand, boom, and show the restoration. And what I like to do is open my hand with the thumb behind the seam. Now what that does, in case, once again, being extra cautious, in case there is any backlighting, that's going to hide the seam being lit from the back. But the audience really isn't looking for it. They have no idea it's there anyway. Another thing to do that you can use to disguise it is to simply raise the hand up and let it go and let that end be in motion. Or you can simply let go like this and then immediately scoop up the rope and lay it into the hand from behind and stretch it out. But you don't have to run because the ropes are made fairly well, so that all you have to do is really let go, create a little bit of motion to distract the eye, keep the thumb behind it, boom. And now when they're going, oh, you simply take the rope, wind it up, and that's the end of the routine. So those are the 3 phases of the ropes. Make sure you practice it. Practice each phase individually. Once again, if it's helpful, go ahead and use the colors. And then when you get up to speed, you can focus on presentation. Now I'd like to talk about the bonus moves. This rope, of course, will work with many of the moves of many of the rope routines that are already out there. So you feel free to use this rope in your own routines and even add moves that you were familiar with to it. But here's a couple extra ones that I really enjoy, that I have used in the past. First of all, one interesting thing to do is to create a visual link of ropes in the air. Here's how it's done. What you do is you start with, let's say the rope has been cut into 2 pieces, a long piece and a short piece. What you do is you place the ropes in the hand like this, show the long and short, and sort of let the ends just hang there over the back of your hand. Then all of a sudden, boom, in an instant, they visually restore back together again. Now, of course, that's done using the principle of the magnets, but it's done in such a fast motion that the audience has a hard time thinking about how that works. So in order to do the move, what you do is you start with the ropes like this, with the 2 ends, the green and the blue, or in other words, the ends that connect to form the long rope. Place them next to each other. Measure up about 3 inches or so, 2 or 3 inches. And what you're going to do is drape them over the front of the hand. But as you drape them over the front of your hand, you're going to separate them, leaving the short end to the left and the long end to the right. So they're hanging. Now, because you've pre-measured them, when you flip them behind your hand, boom, they're instantly going to come in contact and connect. So that now when you let go of everything, these are going to naturally fall, snap together, and then you show that the rope restores visually, just like that. So in other words, it looks like this, and then boom, all of a sudden, they're connected just like that. A little bonus move for you to try. Now let's take a look at another bonus move. Now it's time for the second bonus move. This bonus move is based on, of course, sensational ropes, the traveling ends. What's nice about these bonus moves, by the way, is that let's say you're doing a corporate event and the meeting planner asks you, hey, can you go out there and do an extra minute or 2? We've got a delay or a stall. Well, you can go out and just do 1 or 2 of these bonus moves and tell a joke and you're good to go. This rope is always set up and it's always ready. So here's a nice little bonus move that you can use. It's the traveling ends. But of course, with the slashed or rope, it makes it a lot easier to do. In fact, watch. All you do is you show the rope, boom. Very simply, you have two ends here and a middle there. Now, you're going to kick that middle up into the hand. Well, you're already way ahead of the audience because you've got your separate ends here. All you do is work your thumb into the loop here so that when you're going to extend your thumb, it breaks the magnet and pops one of those ends out. All you have to do is stick your thumb in there and boom, pop the one end out. That's your setup. So what you're going to do is begin. Now you can feel by weight which end is the magnet end, just by your finger on it. And I know that this end is heavier, so that must be the end with the magnet. So first of all, I begin to reel in the end that's non-magnetized right here. And when you've done the move, by the way, you've kept the rope disengaged, so it's free here. So in other words, you've done the move from phase 2 to get it into that position. Once you've reeled the first end in, just boom, pop it over, and the first end is traveled. And then now you're going to bring this particular end up into a position to pop it out. So it should be right down here in your pinky. You're just going to manipulate it while you're reeling this end in into a position that's easy to pop it out. So in other words, just get a little bit of slack in it here so it's ready to pop. Now you're going to reel in the magnet end over here, and you're just going to leave the magnet right here easily accessible at your fingertips. Now, once that's all the way reeled in, you're going to pop out the other end and show that the ends have traveled. Now you can very cleanly let go of the middle. It drops free. Now you can instantly bring your hands together and reconnect. Because this piece is easily at your fingertips, you can just reconnect, crumble everything up for a minute, and drop it to the floor, and now you're completely clear. The ends have gone. You don't have to go to the pocket. It all happens in the hands right out in the open. So that's another bonus move. Now let's take a look at an extra bonus move. And now here's the last bonus move. This happens at the very end of the routine. What we're going to do is drape the ends over and create that short piece that everyone thinks is extended off of the rope. But instead of slowly weaving it in, an interesting thing that you can do is to re-grip the ends like this and just let them connect in your hand. Now this forms an automatic loop. Now all you have to do is toss these ends and it immediately forms a knot. Now you can go two different directions from this point. Boom, once they see the knot visually appear on the rope, you can simply untie the knot and end the routine like that. Or you can cause the knot to vanish by simply showing the knot, breaking the two ends apart and reconnecting them on the other side like this. There's your knot. You simply twist and reconnect over here, and it still looks like you're left with a knot. And then all you do is simply blow on the knot, drop it, and it restores. So that's a little extra visual bonus move, which makes the rope quickly form into a knot. So hopefully you can digest all of that information, put the routine together, and use it to best suit your personality. When you're watching the comedy version, remember, that's my personality. I use a lot of those jokes. Sometimes when I do the routine, I don't use every joke. As you'll see, I think this routine is about 8 minutes and 19 seconds long. There is a little bit of dialogue in the beginning that I'll sometimes eliminate. But I wanted to give you everything that I've ever done with this routine so you could pick and choose which jokes you wanted to use and that best suit your personality. So once again, feel free to use as many or as few of those jokes as you'd like to. The nice thing about this routine is that you can, if you like, incorporate this rope with your particular routines, or you can integrate one or two moves from your routine into this routine. But the way that I've structured it works really well for me with the 3 phases, the impossible to the even more impossible to the unexplainable. Feel free to use the music if you're going to do the pantomime version. Just take that disc, the DVD, put it in your computer, burn a CD, and head right off to your show. But do make sure you practice first. So Slashed is a routine that I think will play for general audiences. On the comedy version, I performed that on the cruise ship. There was 1,000 people there, mostly adults, a couple of kids. But this is a routine that'll play for everyone, whether you do the comedy version or the pantomime version. So I hope you enjoy it. I hope that Slashed makes your performances a cut above the rest.